Good morning, students. In the last video, we had talked about the growing sophistication of Indus Valley civilization, and the production of bronze is a mark of that, because some of you know that bronze is not found in Mother Nature in its original or a natural state. Bronze is an alloy which needs to be, which is actually a combination of metals like copper and tin and things like aluminium or zinc, and so those things have to be added to produce bronze. So if the Harappan people and the Indus Valley people from the Indus Valley civilization were able to do that, it is it's actually an indication that definitely they were not just the hunter and the gatherers, or they just build their huts and it was just or rather the urban planning was their speciality. Now, the question arises that naturally, that where did they get the copper from? So it is believed that they got it from the present day, the areas around present day Rajasthan, around the Khetri copper mines of Rajasthan, and tin was possibly taken from Afghanistan, because Afghanistan happens to be a rich source of tin. Because the other areas which come under Indus Valley, tin is not found in those areas. And we have already discussed that the brick manufacturing was had taken a very advanced form under Indus Valley people, and then there's another thing, but this is something which is not very unique to Indus Valley people. That is the use of gold and silver. Gold and silver for the use of ornaments and beautification. It was really common to, and it has always been common to even the most of the ancient societies. Whether you talk about the Incas or the Aztecs in Latin America, or you talk about the Egyptians or the Mesopotamians or the Chinese, for that matter, silver and gold has always been the favorites. But why is that when we talk about Indus Valley civilization, we are not very confident about what we are talking about? The biggest reason for that is the Indus Valley script could never be deciphered. It has not yet been deciphered. Of course, we have been able to find certain traces of how it looks like, some tablets, but then we have not been able to understand what exactly is written in those tablets. And that is the reason why there is a great amount of difficulty in understanding the nature of the state and the institutions of Indus Valley civilization. Because when you talk about those ancient civilizations, it's very interesting to know that you can say that it could have been a very contemporary civilization, or even if you want to bring the theory that the people who currently live in the southern part of India, some of them had been pushed from the western and the northwestern part of India by the Aryans. Whether you believe in that theory, which is of course something which is held as a very promising theory by a lot of people, that yes, if it was actually the case, but then you have to understand that in the southern part of that is in the southern civilization, the most ancient and the oldest civilization, when you talk about South India is known as the Sangam period, the civilization which developed around the Sangam period. And Sangam period again is divided into three parts, just like Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan period is, like the earliest and the middle and the late Harappan period. It's similar in the Sangam era, but then the good thing about Sangam period is that most of their things, whether it comes in terms of the religion, their state institutions, the literature, everything is recorded. Everything has been written in Tamil. And so it is, you can keep going on and on as to what has been written, and you can keep researching it with the contemporary papers, but you do not have, or the historians do not have this benefit when it comes to trying to understand Indus Valley civilization, because the script could never be read. Uh, uh, and that is the reason why you still do have you do find terracotta figurines of Pashupati, or for that matter, the three-headed terracotta figurines. But then we really do not know whether the concept of religion had taken over, or how important these gods were. We do not know, because now, if I may introduce something which is not there in your chapter, from Indus Valley, not there in Indus Valley civilization. But when you talk about, so let's say, for example, let's take seven wonders of the ancient world, for example. Now, if you talk about, if you take those seven wonders of the ancient world, then you come across things like, of course, one happens to be the lighthouse of Alexandria, and then yes, the hanging gardens of Babylon. But then, yes, these are not specifically about gods, but the temple of Artemis, which the Greeks made, it's about God. Statue of Zeus, it's about God. It's Zeus is what, like Brahma for the Greek. Then the Colossus of Rhodes, that is the huge Colossus is what? It's a huge statue at Rhodes, and then this statue at Rhodes was again dedicated to the sun god, which is Helios. So the other contemporary civilization, they definitely had a very fixed kind of, they had their hierarchy worked out in terms of which god was more prominent than the others, and it's definitely a concept of spirituality, divinity, if not kind of religion, but then definitely were more confident about their where they stood in terms of the spiritual realm. But it appears that in Indus Valley civilization, definitely you have the bust of a priest. You do have certain fragments which kind of which raise your expectation about that, yes, something was there. But then what exactly, to which extent they were into these gods and the divinity and their adherence to them, we really do not know, because religion happens to be one of the very, very important very important factors which give an identity to any civilization or a culture. You remove the concept of religion and God from there, and that civilization suddenly gets bereft of, or rather is devoid of, a very important identity, or a very important factor that gives you that gives that civilization an identity. So we do think that Harappa was possibly ruled by a class of merchants, but we are not quite sure of. We do not have any idea how powerful the priests were, because you have that very famous bust of the priest, but we do not really know how powerful these people were in Indus Valley civilization in terms of when it comes to the Indus Valley society, or the state machinery. We have no idea, because when you again talk about students, you have to understand, when you study history, it's very important to get a right perspective, and you do get a right perspective only by looking at other contemporary civilizations. So if you have to talk about the importance and the significance of priest in Indus Valley civilization, you have to understand that in other contemporary civilizations, whether you talk about Egyptians, or again the Incas or the Aztecs, the priests held an enormously influential position in those societies. They were just next to the king. And in fact, even the kings would not do anything, would not take any major decisions without consulting those priests. Now, whether there was the same situation, or in Indus Valley civilization, whether the priests were as influential as in their other contemporary civilizations, we do not have any idea about that. Because the historians have argued that unlike the other contemporary civilizations, Indus Valley civilization did not have the concept of a king, that where one man would be presiding over all the affairs of the civilization, or he would be the master of everything that happened in a particular territory. Definitely there was no concept of state, so we cannot use this word as of now, but then definitely within the geography. So religion, which, as we've been saying, that it is a very, very important facet in any culture or in any civilization. But then we do not get many clues when it comes to religion. But then, yes, the Harappans were surely into nature worship, because they did worship the sun god. Okay, just like again the contemporary civilization, because Harappans were, they settled around rivers. They prayed to the sun god, just like the Egyptians, who again considered River Nile as the goddess Isis. If you, yes, goddess Isis. So the male divinity is represented on a seal with three horned heads. If you remember, I think it's there in the book. And then sitting in the posture of a yogi. Then we think the gentleman sitting in the posture of a yogi, by certain accounts, I'm not talking about that where he is shown with animals, but then there is also a one, as per certain accounts, as per certain historians, that yogi happens to be the first Jain Tirthankara Rishabh. Yes, students, it's very interesting that we think that Jainism has its origins in India, in India, that is the areas bordering between Bihar and Nepal. But then you have to understand, because that's where Lord Mahavira came from. But then you have to understand one very important thing, that Lord Mahavira was the 24th Tirthankaras as per the Jain pantheon is concerned. But so there were 23 before him, before Lord Mahavir. So the first one was Rishabh, and he's considered to be the one who his origins are traced to the areas around in Indus Valley Civilization, the areas around Harappa. Okay, so that is very unique and curious. And then you have the Pashupati figure, in which we all know is considered to be the original, or rather the progenitor of Lord Shiva. So we do have these kind of hints, but but then nothing is for certain that yes, it is like we just said, that yes, you have this temple of Artemis, you have a temple of the goddess Artemis, you have the statue of Zeus, you have the statue of the sun god. We do not have that advantage when we study as a student of history the Indus Valley civilization. Okay, so but yes, we do have kind of the closest which comes to, definitely not in terms of the grandeur, but definitely in terms of its concept, which is the Pashupati Mahadeva, which is then this god is shown to be surrounded by an elephant, tiger, rhinoceros, and buffalo below his throne. So definitely giving an idea about if the people in Indus Valley civilization knew about the rhinoceros of all animals, and definitely at one point in time rhinoceros was also found in those areas. Today definitely it is not. In fact, rhinoceros, you would find that in the Indian subcontinent today it is only found in way away from Indus Valley areas, that is in Assam right now, and nowhere in South Asia you would find rhinoceros. And when it comes to, again, when we are talking about animals, we have already discussed in the previous video that yes, the horses were not very important for us. So we were more into the bulls for the use of, for their use rather in agriculture and growing of crops.